Welcome back to Those Happy Places, the podcast that treats theme parks, rides, and attractions like literature. I'm Buddy Duquesne.
And I'm Alice White.
And to start us off this episode, Alice will be reading us a brief passage from a book that she's read recently that illustrates our point perfectly.
Yes, I will be reading a short paragraph from I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara. Okay. There's always the question of what to call an unknown perpetrator in police reports. The choice is often the suspect, occasionally the offender, or sometimes simply the man. Whoever wrote the Danville reports elected to use a term that was stark and unambiguous in its charge, its tone of reproach as if a finger were pointing from the very page. The term affected me the moment I read it. It became my private shorthand for the EAR, the simple term I return to when I lay awake at 3 a.m., cycling through a hoarder's collection of murky half-clues and indistinct facial features. I admired the plainness of its unblinking claim. The responsible. And I chose that passage because earlier today, Buddy Duquesne turned to me and said, "Hey, Alice, do you know of any passages that properly, any passages from a book that properly demonstrate the literary idea of tension?" And I knew immediately what kind of tension I was thinking of, the kind of writing, the kind of imagery that you would get in literature when you want to invoke tension in something.
Yeah, and this week, Alice, you and I have just returned from a trip to the landmark, the icon, the local institution itself, Knott's Berry Farm, a park that you and I grew up at. And the thing that really got us thinking today was our experience with different kinds of tension in thrill rides.
Yeah, so as this is a podcast about treating theme parks, rides, and attractions like literature, we have struggled over the course of this podcast with coming up with a way to incorporate like roller coasters into the podcast, because you wouldn't typically think of a roller coaster as having a story to tell. Right,
beyond the basic experiential, like, you are on a roller coaster and that is the story. But have you ever thought about, and this is actually kind of funny, Alice, to bring this up just right now, but that old kind of grade school level story map. The one that has a beginning that's kind of flat, and then the rising tension, and then the climax, and then the
falling action.
And the way that mirrors the imagery of a roller coaster from afar.
That's
the traditional roller coaster.
That's funny that you just thought of that.
I just thought of that. And it's funny that, today, after writing a few really big, fast roller coasters that used tension in a couple of different ways, and to kind of think about how that influences the way that we experience the story of that roller coaster, being on it, and then to compare it to, say, a paragraph from this wonderful book that you've read, that you won't stop raving about.
I will not stop raving about how good it is.
And to compare it to the paragraph in the way that an author can use language to ratchet up tension and to drive the reader forward with slightly more detail every time, until eventually there's kind of the drop of that title.
The responsible.
Right, and how you kind of fall into the book with it, and then you're along for the ride. That's how tension functions in a smaller sense. And then also there's the narrative sense of things slowly getting more and more serious until eventually that final confrontation, the climactic battle or whatever, depending on your story.
Right.
So maybe we should start with a couple of examples.
In literature or in theme parks?
I was thinking in theme parks.
Okay.
So Alice, you and I were at, as we were saying, Knott's Berry Farm today.
Yes.
And there are a couple of amazing roller coasters at that. The roller coaster that comes to mind first and foremost was the ride. Yeah, was the ride that gave us, or that gave me, that feeling of tension. And when I leaned over to you and I was like, the tension is killing me. It's really getting to me. I'm nervous. Was Xcelerator.
Yes.
Now here's a ride. So Xcelerator is also known as Xcelerator the Ride. I don't know why.
Xcelerator the Ride.
I don't know why they had to put the ride at the end of it. But it is a launch coaster, right?
Yes.
That's how we would describe it. It starts at a standstill. You put your head back. You hold on, and whoop, up a hill you shoot. Nearly vertical.
At very, very high speeds.
I do believe it's around 80 miles an hour.
Yes. When Xcelerator was released, the big draw was that it would launch you at about 80 miles an hour from 0 to 80 in seconds.
Yes. Really, really fast. Much faster than you think.
And it is so fun.
It is a lot of fun. And it was a very intense ride for me, especially. And so you go way up vertically, and then you crest the hill, and you drop down, and then you kind of go vertical down as well.
Yes.
And then there's just a couple of smaller turns that are much less intense, and then the ride is over. It couldn't be longer than 30 seconds. But the tension is in that launch. Quite literally, these are rides that use high tension wires being pulled very, very quickly to get that acceleration. And the tension that we were feeling was, when will the ride launch?
Right. And how they achieve that is quite literal. In Xcelerator, they literally do a countdown. There's a series of lights, like if you were racing a car. These lights that they go yellow, 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 green, and they light up in order. And so you get this building tension of watching these yellows go move down the line, and you know the last light is going to be the go. Right. But you don't know when they're about to start. You don't know how long it's going to linger on each light. It's
really unpredictable.
Yes.
And in that way, it's a little dangerous because it's such a fast acceleration that you do need to have your head back. So if you're not paying attention, you could lean over at the wrong moment or whatever.
But they pull you back and they get you ready.
Yeah.
And you can feel it tense up. You feel the ride.
That's such an interesting feeling too. So as the ride is beginning, there is a little bit of a pullback, almost as if it's kind of a rubber band car or something like that.
Yeah, I was thinking like a pullback race car.
Oh, like those little pullback race cars.
Yeah.
I remember those.
And so then you pull it back, and then you wait. There it goes, and it it's like a rubber band goes off, and there you go, zooming off, and so it literally builds a tension so much until it snaps, and you go, and it's
a lot. It's very fast.
It's very, very, very fast. And genuinely, I am really sorry. I didn't know that was your first time on that coaster.
Yeah.
I would have prepped you for it or something.
Well, I don't think anything you could have said would have made it. And I was kind of holding that information back because I kind of wanted to buy in. I wanted to feel it a little bit. And so when I leaned over as we were kind of fixing our seatbelts, and I was like, oh man, now I'm nervous. I think that's the idea of the tension. That's what a good ride designer does with design, with the way that a car can launch. And we did experience tension, I think, that went too far today.
Yes, we also Xcelerator toes that line, but nails it, and is a very, very good ride. We also today rode the brand new, just opened a month ago?
Yeah, not very long ago at all.
A brand new roller coaster at Knott's called Hangtime.
Now, Hangtime is a dive coaster.
Yes. It pulls you up vertically, and where you're laying on your back.
So imagine if you haven't seen a picture, the classic hill, the chain-driven, clankety clank up the hill you go, but you are all vertical. The way back, and it's completely vertical. And Alice, we went from stoked.
Oh, cool, brand new coaster. And then it crests the hill, and the idea is called Hangtime. because it literally holds you dangling kind of over the edge before it drops you into that dive.
There's some hanging time.
Yeah, yeah.
So we got to...
In that hang time, that tension was building.
It was palpable.
And we were in the front row.
And so as you crest this hill and are able to see that there's nothing below you.
Right.
Because the drop is actually greater than 90 degrees. It curves in.
Yeah.
And as we crested the hill and we're able to see nothing below us and nothing in front of us because we were in this front row.
And then it held us there.
And that hold was...
so scary.
Terrifying, I would say.
It was proper scary. I was terrified for my life. I saw my life flash before my eyes, and that may sound like an exaggeration.
Because it is a very highly checked roller coaster that operates with thousands of people daily and everybody is fine.
But there were moments there where I really thought, like, is this lap bar enough to hold me down? Am I going to fall all the way out? And I let out a scream of actual real terror.
Yeah, I remember you even apologizing to the people next to us.
Well,
You're like, I'm sorry, I'm cursing, because it was so
I let out a scream of actual terror and then cursed a lot of times in a row. And then shouted very loudly, I'm sorry for swearing, because there was a child near me.
Alice, I do not blame you for that reaction.
I was so scared.
I was right there with you. I feel like I was saying, hold on, like we're gonna be okay. Because I was literally gripping my seat so tightly. And I was scared, truly fearful that something was wrong with how this was going.
And so that tension, and maybe people really like that?
Yeah, that could be the thing that a thrill seeker seeks.
It was way too much for me. That took it over the edge from what the kind of fun, the kind of thrill, the kind of scare that I expect to get at a theme park. And it took it too far into actual terror, which is not what I signed up for and not what I wanted to do.
No, I signed up for a good time. And I think a lot of what made it so bad for us was the harness style, which was this lap bar that kind of squeezed down on your legs, but never really felt tight.
I didn't feel tight around my waist, like at my center of gravity. It was just like pressing down really hard on my thighs, but not enough where I really felt like if I was maybe more top heavy, would just tip right over.
Yeah, and that was kind of the idea with the kind of curved decline at the end there was maybe that you were supposed to feel kind of like you were toppling over, kind of crashing over this
because it's
like
a wave, yeah.
And maybe that was what they were trying to evoke. But it was
too much.
It's truly not my favorite ride.
I would never do it again.
Not my favorite rodeo. And that's okay. When we talk about the way that tension affects us, so often it is used to induce fear, or at least maybe a thrill, an excitement, and investment as well.
Right.
And I think we were definitely invested in that moment.
Yes.
Invested in surviving.
Well, it's kind of like in a horror film. And I don't like horror films, so maybe I just have a problem with overwhelming tension. I don't enjoy a horror film. And it's not necessarily the jump scares, but it's that pause before the jump scare where that tension builds so much and you know something's about to happen, but you don't know what.
Yeah.
And
there was an uncertainty on Hangtime, wasn't there?
Yeah. I was really unsure. I wasn't sure how long we were going to stay there. I wasn't sure if I was going to make it. I wasn't sure how fast we would go when we finally did drop. I didn't know, but I knew something was about to happen, and that scared me so bad. And I don't like horror movies. Do you like horror movies?
Not really. No, I'm not a huge fan. But though a good scare once in a while is okay. Yeah. And I really like cheesy horror films where things are just so bad.
Right. And the cheesy horror films though, when they're bad, and a lot of them kind of know that they're bad. And so what the draw for that is this, oh yeah, it's a horror movie tension where we're going to we're going to get you ready for a big scare. Yeah. And your response is to laugh. You maybe jump, and then you burst out laughing. And that's how I feel on, say, a very, the next best, maybe the best Knott's roller coaster is Silver Bullet.
Right.
which has a big chain,
gradual chain incline,
and then lets you go. And as soon as we hit these big loops, all I can do is laugh.
Yeah.
You laugh and cheer, and you might scream a little like, oh, it's
Oh, no.
a loop,
Yeah.
but you're not scared. You laugh. It's this exhilarating like release of
tension.
of tension and emotion and endorphins, and
Yeah.
that's a good thing. And a silly scary movie might do the same for you. You cheer with your heroes, but like if it's a very like a properly scary horror film, I just want to cry the whole time because I'm so scared for the person on the screen. I know it's fake, but I'm so scared for the person on the screen that
especially if
I
there's
can't relax.
if there's like existential horror or like really deep, disturbing horror where you can't laugh that off, and maybe it is well acted and the effects are convincing. That sort of thing, to me, does take it to a realm of discomfort. Like, oh, I don't want to be watching this anymore. And I think there's something to be said for predictability and kind of that comfort of being swaddled, because tension exists in almost every story. Even the stories we know how they're supposed to end. Maybe especially. When I teach story structure to my students, I often talk about the Three Little Pigs and the rising tension of the Three Little Pigs. And
The stakes get higher.
The stakes keep getting higher. The pigs keep running into the next house, so the wolf might eat them all, right? So we keep getting more and more tension building, and the release is when the wolf drops into the pot and they eat wolf soup, depending on the version of the story that you read. I like the wolf
Yours
soup
is very
version.
dark.
Yeah. So he climbs down the chimney and he
Yeah, and they've been preparing a boiling
and they're like,
pot for him.
we're so delicious in here. Hope you don't climb down this chimney. Yeah, it's great. And everybody knows how the Three Little Pigs ends. And everybody knows that if you watch Star Wars that, this hasn't been true lately, actually, especially with The Last Jedi, where we think we know how it's going to end.
Well,
and then our expectations are subverted. So
get back around to that one. But in your original Star Wars movie,
if you go and watch A New Hope, we know that the bad guys can't get away with blowing up all the good guys. Like, it's not going to happen that way.
So our good guys blow up the bad guys.
Right. So when the evil witch turns into a dragon, we know that the prince is going to get a sword and shield and stop her. Right. Like there's an expectation, and I think in rides where you have kind of a gradual incline, you've got your nice shoulder harnesses. Praise the shoulder harness.
Oh, yes. Shoulder harness is the new Omni mover.
Shoulder harness Omni mover for best ride. You've got all of the things that you expect, and it's very comfy. It's not terrifying. It's not scary. It doesn't necessarily challenge your expectations or bring you to a place you didn't want to be. Your expectations are confirmed, and tension can be built and released, and it's a joyous experience. It's like, yay, and we never experienced anything that pushed us out of our zone of comfort. And I don't mean comfort zone. I mean like a zone of being comfortable.
Yes.
Comfort zone would be negative. We'd be stuck in it. A zone of comfort is you can push that envelope a little, but you don't want to be terrified, scared for your life.
Yeah. Yes. The difference between a good roller coaster is that, you're no longer comfortable. You are, in a scary spot, or like we're upside down. No, this is not usual. And you're out of your comfort zone, but you're still safe.
Yeah.
Versus genuinely, like, I really wanted to like Hangtime, but I was genuinely scared for my life.
Maybe sitting farther back would be a good way to try and get back on that ride.
Maybe not the first row. But I don't think I ever want to do it again to try it out. I was that scared.
It was a very scary moment. And it's funny how tension works that way. How when you're held in it for too long, or if it's too full of things that are bad.
Right.
How are our heroes going to get out of this one? They can't. Oh no.
oh.
That would be really bad if that happened, and we'd be dissatisfied by stories that went that way.
Right.
We would be upset. And I think that, speaking of subverted expectations, you and I both loved The Last Jedi.
Yes.
And that is a movie that ratchets up tension and ratchets up tension and ratchets up tension, and we're supposed to expect, because Star Wars is designed a certain way, to the good guys to triumph in the end, but that really does not happen.
Not really. It's also the second in a trilogy.
Right, so we're
okay.
expecting a kind of a darker ending and people to be on the run. Just like at the end of Empire.
Empire, yeah.
So, our expectations are subverted a little. And I wonder if there was a way we could have subverted your expectations of tension on a roller coaster just a little. And not hurt your sensibility, not broken from your zone of comfort, made it unpleasant.
Right. Yeah. I wonder if there is a way to do that. Can you think of another roller coaster that you really like that maybe changed kind of how you felt about a structure of a roller coaster, other than a change in like seating format? Like I'm gonna jump on over to Six Flags for a second. Like Tatsu is a very, very good roller coaster on its own. Would be just a good coaster on its own because it's big and it's got big deal loops and stuff. But your expectation, the strange part of the ride is you're laying down flat on your stomach.
Ooh, wow.
For the entire ride, and you're holding on. You're in a thing that kind of looks like a kite or like a hang glider, and you're flat on your stomach, and it squishes you in like a pancake. And
do you
like
feel
a
secure
panini.
that way?
I felt very secure.
Interesting.
Extremely secure, because the thing that presses down on your back and the thing that curls up from your belly and a thing to hold on to here, I never felt unsafe on that ride. But you're so different.
Moving head first, feet backwards,
and they do a big. You go on the inside of a loop that way,
and
it is.
Wow.
I can't believe you've never been on it. It is such a good ride. It's Six Flags Magic Mountain,
right.
By the way. I don't know if that exists at other Six Flags parks.
There are other Six Flagses.
And not to turn this episode into a Six Flags episode, because I can do an episode on Six Flags too. But the how I expect a roller coaster to subvert my expectations is to give me a new type of format. Riddler's Revenge at Six Flags is a standing coaster.
Are your feet on the ground the whole time?
Your feet are on the ground, yes. But you're standing, and you have a shoulder harness and a thing between your legs, and the shoulder harness hooks into the thing between your legs, and then you go.
Right.
and the G-forces from your loops and turns and stuff even further keep your feet on the ground.
Interesting.
It's really fun.
Yeah.
And it's different. Its sister coaster, the Batman coaster right next door, is just a traditional roller coaster.
No, it's not even hanging.
It's a suspended coaster.
Okay.
But it's just like a regular old suspension coaster.
Sure.
That I feel like every park's got a suspension coaster.
Just about these days.
But I've never seen another standing coaster outside of Riddler's Revenge. Maybe they're at other Six Flags parks. But I've never been on a roller coaster that lays down like Tatsu, and I've never been on a roller coaster like X2, which has on the sides of the car, you sit in a little pod that turns, as well as while the car is making its loops and stuff. You're in like a little pod that also flips.
Right.
It's a very intense coaster. And I love intense coasters. And those coasters give me they are a regular roller coaster, what with your loops and your corkscrews and your spins and whatever, but they give you a new format.
Yeah.
And that's what I expected out of the dive coaster. I was like, oh, it's just like a roller coaster, but it starts with
something new.
A new kind of drop. But it was too scary. And I don't know, maybe that's a personal thing. Maybe I'm just a baby. Maybe that was my comfort zone. Maybe that's the end of my zone.
Yeah, because
I love coasters.
There is a ride at Knott's that is way outside my zone as well. I don't like drop rides. I don't like vertical drop rides, and the Supreme Scream Towers are verboten for me. I simply will not. And that's another example of tension being ratcheted up. Literally, you
get pulled
up a hill,
all the way up.
Not a hill, a tower,
and then held,
and then dropped without warning. So that tension must be really extreme as well, and I just can't can't do that.
Okay,
I think
so that's your line.
Yeah.
I love it.
I think healthy tension invites the audience in, and challenges them in that it challenges them in a new way, but not in a way that proves to be too much for them. And that's a fine line to walk. It must be, as a ride designer. If I were trying to build a roller coaster, I would be like, I don't know where to stop and where to start with the tension.
And I guess for some people, for true coaster junkies, people who love the biggest, craziest thrill rides, anybody who's designing a coaster for those people, it's like the line to not cross over is like what will make someone pass out while you're riding it.
Right.
Like what will make you black out. And yeah, like how much G-force you can put on this turn.
Right, there's a safety line, I suppose.
And that's, for some people, that is their only line. They're fine with any coaster so long as it's safe.
Right.
And I guess we have found our lines. Which is, I did not want to find my line today. I did not want
that wasn't
to be
the goal.
I did not want to be pushed to that limit, and just on a casual, let's go to the local theme park and ride some rides and enjoy our day. I wasn't ready.
It's so interesting to note that there's a physical experience line and then also a fiction line. I don't like horror movies. I don't want to watch them. The tension is bad. And I don't like hanging over a cliff on a roller coaster. The tension is bad. It makes me uncomfortable.
Well, maybe there's this comfort now to know that I do have a line.
Yeah.
Like it's like the first time you get drunk and you're like, oh, that was how many. That's was
how
too
many drinks it is.
Now I've got my limit, and I know my limit.
I once had one entire alcohol.
Don't drink, kids.
No.
But yeah, that idea that maybe that is in itself a form of comfort of knowing your limit and knowing how far you can go before it's too much.
And that's a purpose of fiction, and I would say of theme park rides, is putting your body or your mind in situations that you should not be in. Mm-hmm. I feel like if you ended up on top of a roller coaster, not locked into a roller coaster seat, that would be a bad time.
Yes.
I feel like if you ended up in a house being chased by a murderer, that would be a bad time.
So it gives you this false equivalence, like this. Yeah, this is what it would feel like if you were at the top of this cliff. But obviously you're safe.
Yeah, you'll be okay.
So it's giving your brain a chance to trick itself into, for a moment, thinking that you're actually in danger. And that's what releases that adrenaline that is so intoxicating for people.
What makes so many people into these roller coaster junkies. And junkie is the operative word there, right? Somebody chasing a high.
Yeah.
And so we are definitely literature junkies. We're film buffs, and we chase that narrative high as well.
Yeah.
Right. Exciting battles without honor or humanity, gunfights and whirlwind romances and things like that. Things that maybe we don't get to experience quite often.
Yeah, that's that escapism.
Yeah.
That ability to put yourself for just a moment into a world that isn't yours. And it's intoxicating. It's addicting.
And when we talk about escapism in theme parks, we sometimes really focus in on narrative and narrative-based rides, and like, oh man, it's your chance to fly with Peter Pan, for example, episode 2. Your chance to fly with Peter Pan. But here it's actually, oh man, it's your chance to plummet down a vertical drop at 80 miles an hour and then go upside down. And that's a different kind of release. It's I don't know about cathartic with that, because this principle of catharsis, of watching others go through situations so that your brain can experience those emotions safely, right? And you can kind of release all that negative emotion, usually negative, We talk about catharsis mostly in connection to tragedy.
Right, and overcoming or releasing yourself from a negative emotion.
Right. So we watch the most tragic situations. For example, Greek tragedy, Oedipus Rex. We watch a man find out that he married his mother and murdered his father. And we watch the most tragic thing happen, and we see him gouge his eyes out and go into exile, and we're like, at least I'm not him, and I also felt with him, and I feel better now for it. And I don't think that's roller coasters at all. I don't think that's the tension that we have released.
No, because most of the time you walk off of a coaster, not like, oh boy, ooh boy,
Wow,
I really got something out of that.
Now that I've had a brush with death, I sure can go around.
No, you walk off and you're like, oh yes, that was awesome. I want to do another one. Let's do it again. That's after Silver Bullet today.
We were like, again.
I want it.
It's so funny. Going off of Xcelerator, there was a lady who was like, you guys are gonna love it, and I was like, oh my god, she's so stoked that just happened to her.
Yeah,
and
she wanted to pass that on to the next. Oh man, you guys are gonna love it. She says to somebody who's getting in line.
And I wonder if maybe coaster junkies in the audience let us know. I wonder if you leave feeling like refreshed, if that's a feeling that you get, because sometimes when we leave dramatic works of fiction, or even in your case, a dramatic work of nonfiction from the passage that you...
Seriously, guys, go read the book. Go read I'll Be Gone in the Dark by the incomparable Michelle McNamara. Honestly, it's so good.
But even in the case of nonfiction, we put ourselves in someone else's shoes, and we experience with them, and we feel refreshed afterwards. And I wonder if that's a thing for coaster junkies. If you feel all negative and bottled up, and then you release on a roller coaster. If you let the tension build and let it go as you go down that first hill.
And you let it go, and you walk off. If for them you walk off, go, yes, that was great. I feel so good.
It's just what I needed, like a spa day.
I feel like I walk away from theme parks, like from a day at a theme park, feeling like that. Like,
it's weird. I just feel sore.
Yeah, my feet hurt very much. But yeah, if I walk away from the theme park, wow, that was really fun. Like the end of the adrenaline high. But immediately after a coaster, I'm like, oh man, I'm all so wired. I'm gonna go on another one. Give me another ride.
What other thrills can I have? What other new experiences can I see?
Keep this high going for as long as possible?
You know, Alice, this reminds me of a ride that we haven't mentioned today, which is Jaguar. Jaguar. Sorry, I pronounce it like the car. Jaguar. It's an older coaster at Knott's. It's been there for quite some time, and it's vaguely Mayan themed. I would say Aztec, maybe.
Oh, it's so hard because a lot of it feels so generically.
It is generic.
Central
American pyramid building culture. One of them.
It's very generic. I think that part of the park is supposed to be Aztec.
Okay.
What with the Montezuma's
there you go.
Next to it and stuff. That I think it's supposed to be Aztec, but the pyramid it's in looks vaguely Mayan. It's a little iffy. It kind of lumps a few stereotypes together.
It certainly does. That whole area does. And we'll get back into that in another Knott's episode. This is part one of many. But Jaguar is virtually tensionless, I would say.
No, there's no tension to it at all.
There's a moderate incline, I would call it, that leads to a gentle sloping drop.
It kind of books for a while.
Yeah, it's a quick coaster. I would describe it as
little quick,
but not fast.
No, not fast. No big turns.
It banks in a way.
A couple of times.
and it leaves an impression of for such a long coaster, and it really is a long coaster, nearly 2 minutes long. I think.
It's super long.
It's forgettable.
Yeah, you walk in, you're like, cool.
It doesn't break any rules. Take any chances. The cars are 2x2. The train is pretty long. It's well themed. I mean, the theming is throughout. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it goes through the loop of another coaster,
which is a neat touch.
Which is a nice touch, and it goes over the lake, and it goes over like a couple other like smaller kid rides, and you almost get like a mini tour of that side of the park while you're
bird's eye
on
view.
This like super long family coaster.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's no tension. It's just like nice. And there's no like that is a point where I'd be like, well, there was no story there. There was no narrative. There's no place for it. Really, I mean, other than to just be a kind of an intro coaster, I think, for kids to get into the idea of a roller coaster.
Yeah, so kind of try it out as a concept. Bigger than a baby coaster, but not challenging.
Yeah.
And I wonder, there must be a few fictional works out there that kind of mirror this, that are kind of transitional, kind of vaguely tensiony.
I guess it would be like middle grade. Like I was gonna say young adult, but not. I mean, some young adult literature gets truly, really remarkable depths of
complexity.
Yeah, and but I guess like a middle grade, like novel, like the one I tried to write for NaNoWriMo this year, was just shooting for stuff that kids. Not baby books, but not young adult literature, this middle ground, which is, I think, a really unrecognized, like not very well fleshed out space in literature that I think could use a new like series.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important age range for getting kids interested in anything, like 9 to 13. It's like this weird spot where these kids are either reading baby books still or books that are just like a little too advanced for them. And I think the first couple Harry Potter books did like a pretty good job of nailing that demographic.
Yeah.
But then they grow with their audience. So, you get older as your characters get older and they turn into young adult novels. But I don't think there's enough for that age range. But I think, Jaguar is the middle grade coaster.
Yeah.
This is a good spot to sit when you're learning. It's
a way to be welcomed in. It's tension that's healthy. It's a little scary.
If you're a small child and this is your first big kid coaster, you might be a little spooked.
And no, the line does not help one bit.
Oh yeah, no, the line is like
a spooky temple
inside the temple, and there's skulls in there and like creepy murals on the walls of.
Yeah, I could see being. In fact, I remember being very scared of Jaguar.
Of the line.
Yeah.
Of waiting in
mostly the line, the ride itself, not so much.
Right.
But that gives you a different kind of a thrill. And it's funny because Disneyland, for all of its thrills that it does have, and we won't harp on Disneyland too much, this is the Knott series, but Disneyland, for all of the thrills that it does have, does kind of avoid tension in a lot of places.
Yeah, you might get a Snow White scary adventure, or you're like a little bit of spookiness.
Yeah.
But
we're never worried.
Yeah, you're never worried for yourself or or the characters. The closest I can think of is another line. Like when you said you were afraid of the Jaguar line, I was afraid of the Indiana Jones line.
Yeah, that's a little worrying.
It's you kind of go through this, and again, it's like inside of this temple. I guess it's maybe this like temple imagery, this like spooky, could be haunted place where anything can happen. And this undiscovered exploration of this interior space. It's very enclosed and kind of claustrophobic.
Yeah, kind of a pre-show tension.
Yeah.
And, it reminds me a little bit of the Haunted Mansion, which has a queue that can scare a lot of people. And we had a friend who was very scared of it when we were growing up. And that the kind of claustrophobic, scary, dark way to kind of welcome people into this world can be the difference between accessibility and not accessibility. And we were talking a little bit about accessibility earlier.
Yeah.
But in a different way, a different context. But I think tension and accessibility are kind of linked. And the way that things are tense determines who it's for. Yeah.
And you've got to walk your line when you know your audience, you got to walk your line. And I guess this is why Disney, part of of the many reasons why Disney gets such high praise for their theming and their, the appropriateness of their rides and how they keep pulling in all these audiences. They know and walk that line. Not often. They don't ever cross it, and they only sometimes get near it. But they know
what the line is.
What the line is. And very, very strongly know this is how far our children and then our slightly older children can handle, what we can show them.
I'm actually kind of thinking about the Incredicoaster right now, which we haven't ridden since its retooling.
It opened like less than a week ago.
California Screamin' was kind of our transition ride into these bigger roller coasters. At least that's how I remember it.
It was the first coaster I can remember riding that had a loop.
And a launch.
And a launch. Yeah. It's not a very fast. I mean, it was
top
kind of
speed
fast.
Of 50, I believe.
Oh,
it's not that fast.
It's not that fast. It's kind of speedy, but I do remember. It's like 50-ish. I do remember it when I was like a little scared of it. Mom was like waiting in line with my mom, and she was like, "Oh, well, it's only going to launch up to like 50 miles an hour. We go faster than that on the freeway
every day." And
I was like, "Oh, okay." And I remember that reassuring. I was like, "Oh yeah, well, that's a car." And this is a car, and it's just going to go like a freeway speed. And that was like easier for me. 80 and Xcelerator is a little...
It does feel fast no matter what speed that speed is.
Have and to go 80 on the freeway, but it's different in a coaster, obviously.
It is. And speed is always different in a coaster. Alice, we got to some interesting places with our discussion of tension today.
I know. I didn't expect us to touch... to cover so many topics and so many coasters in one sitting.
Yeah. Thank you.
We don't really plan very much when we start talking. We like to be a little more freeform. I'm this was a good talk.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, Buddy, it seems that our time talking about tension and roller coasters, specifically at Knott's Berry Farm, has come to an end.
That's right. But, Atlas, you and I have a lot going on coming up, and you have a couple of special announcements, don't you?
I have at least one very special announcement to make. My side project with the absolutely incredible T.H. Ponders is finally live on Twitter. We have a podcast called Rogue Fun, a podcast story, where we rewatch Rogue One every month and until the end of time, and we do a new an episode on a different topic every single month. So last month we did our personal connection and like an intro to the podcast, our personal connection to the movie, and this month we're doing the first scene. We're doing an episode entirely dedicated to the opening 5 minutes of the film. And you can find more information on Twitter at RogueFunPod. And there's a link to the RSS feed there where you can download the episode and give it a listen. It's been so fun.
Alice, you and Ponders gave me a shout out / call out in the first episode.
Yes.
And I am looking forward to listening to every episode and eventually guest hosting, because I have a lot to say about the movie Rogue One, A Star Wars Story.
It's a very good movie.
I know it's your favorite.
It's my favorite Star Wars movie.
Yes.
So, if you want to hear a lot of positive, happy Star Wars talk, which the Star Wars community could sorely use, I think, come on over to Rogue Fun and tweet at us what you think about the movie and about the podcast. We're excited to hear what you all think.
And you were saying that podcast is with the incomparable T.H. Ponders, who is at T.H. Ponders on Twitter. And he has another project, right?
That's right. Ponders is art history podcast. Accession just put out a couple of absolutely game-changing episodes. They're so well made and so well formatted, and he's been trying some new stuff, playing with the format of his podcast. They went to the moon a couple episodes ago.
I remember going to the moon.
And it was so
with
good.
T.H. Ponders.
and Charles Gustine as Stanley Kubrick at the end. Which
What are you talking about? That was Stanley Kubrick.
Stanley Kubrick. It was so good, and yeah. So go ahead and go listen to Rogue Fun and of course Accession.
And speaking of Charles Gustine, the Iconography podcast has now begun its second season. And Alice, you and I were just talking about the episode about the Citgo sign and the Boston Marathon,
which was emotional and awesome.
Yeah, I've never even been to Boston, and I cried like a baby. So it was really, really good. Really helped me understand and kind of imagine the city of Boston with its own personality. Really looking forward to the rest of the season about it.
Yeah, we've got some really wonderful podcasting friends out there on Twitter who have been making our lives great from day one. And so we wanted to thank them. And to thank you, the listeners, who are just so great.
That's right, listeners. And if you want to be extra great and tell us what you think about our podcast, of course, you can find us on Twitter. Alice, you are at Alice White, THP, for those happy places.
Very good.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And Buddy, you are at Buddy_Duquesne. And Duquesne is spelled
Duquesne. That's right. How good of you to know exactly the thing I say.
I've known you my whole life. I know how to spell your name.
And if you'd like, you can find us on Facebook as well.
Yes, you can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/thosehappyplaces. And we're always talking about ideas for theme parks and our favorite rides. Just come on in and join the conversation.
Alice, I believe that you produced this episode and did the research for it.
Yes, and I believe that you edited this episode.
Yes, I will have edited this episode by the time our listeners hear it. And speaking of our listeners hearing it, they are currently hearing our theme music, which is Golden Gate by the California Feetwarmers, featuring Phil Alvin. You can find the Feetwarmers at their website, californiafeetwarmers.com. Additional music for this episode, Alice, did come from the Podington Bear on the Free Music Archive. You can find his and many other works on thefreemusicarchive.org.
And if you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and tell your friends. Those are very helpful steps that you can take to making sure that we continue making this podcast, which we love doing. Very much.
Yes, so much.
Is this how outros work?
This is not how outros work.
No, I like it though.
Thank you for listening, and we hope you return to those happy places.